What is up, everybody? I'm NoLucksGiven here with your afternoon snap, and today we are talking tempo. Once again, we're going to take a look at Tempo Thanos, showcasing a few cool highlights from games I played over the weekend, and I thought this was a fun one to kick things off. Most of these games are going to showcase different other ways that tempo can be good that I didn't showcase in the previous video, and in this one, we've got Gamma Lab on turn 3, and we're going to be able to take great advantage of that. So I am snapping, and we also get to take great advantage of the undo end turn feature, because I almost forgot to move Jeff over into Gamma Lab, but nothing can stop Jeff from moving now, not even the end turn button. But what I thought was really cool about this game is an interaction that I did not see coming. So we've got 3 cards here in Gamma Lab, and that is going to mean we get 3 Hulks. And then we get 39 power to that location, and I was a little bit confused with this at first. I was like, is Baxter building bugged or something? But we actually get to make use of the AVX ability of the Hulk for having 3 Avengers there, because we've got 3 Hulks. So just was not expecting that, thought that that was cute to showcase. And one thing that I also wanted to showcase that I don't think I talked about in the previous video is Blob, who's pretty good in this deck, and that might seem pretty straightforward. Blob, Thanos, No Lux, we know this already. However, typically Blob is played alongside Magneto and Scar, these really big, expensive cards, but what's cool about this deck is you can make a big Blob using some pretty cheap cards that also help you fulfill your tempo goal. That's actually exactly what we're going to see in this one. We have not drawn Crossbones or Gladiator this game, and we're going to be able to eat both of those up with Blob. There is the Gladiator and the Crossbones along with a Mind Stone there. So just a pretty cool alternate way to be able to utilize those cards. If you don't draw them early enough, you can still use them with Blob as a sort of catch-up mechanic, and I think that that is just a powerful angle that this deck can also operate on. We get to basically play a free Mockingbird on turn 5 alongside a Mobius, because I've got 3 Hulks and a Rock alongside my Time Stone that these locations have granted us. So yeah, basically a free Mockingbird here. That card's busted. Don't have to say too much more. We'll see how this game completes, just to let it play out here, but basically my opponent is going to retreat now. On turn 5, they play Magic, which is a very awkward card to play against a Thanos deck that has not shown their Reality Stone yet, and because of that, they're actually just going to wind up retreating on turn 6 for the fear that I am going to Reality Stone and put an end to the game, and with that, they're not going to be able to develop everything that they need to, and they're going to say sayonara. This is another game that I thought showcased tempo pretty well, because we have the Raft. First to fill that location is going to get a free 6-cost card, and we can fill the Raft this turn while also moving out of the location on the final turn with Space Stone, and that's just going to give us a lot of flexibility. The Super Flow has also given me a lot of flexibility this game. And then I'm going to get Spectrum, which is kind of a spicy one to be able to pull out of the Raft, because it's a card that Thanos decks can make use of. Thanos decks can make use of any card. We know the deal by now. Thanos is just busted, and this deck is, or this game rather, is going to showcase a pretty busted final turn as well. My opponent has a 10 power vision because of Elsa, so they're no slouch themselves. And basically what I'm going to do from here is just completely abandon Machine World while fortifying the other 2 locations, and I'm able to do that a little bit because of this Space Stone here. What I need to do, though, I feel, is protect the center location with the Raft, and this is something that you can do when you have priority, is use Professor X to play around Shang-Chi, and then for the final part of the turn, I will just put as much power as I can into Superflow. In order to Shang-Chi me, my opponent has to move Vision out of the center location, which means I am going to be able to make up the power that I'm losing there by moving a card out. So I could even move out a bigger card than Time Stone. I could move out like the Crossbones and then put some, I was playing around with some things here first before I eventually landed on this play, but I could potentially instead decide to move out a bigger card, because if my opponent needs to Shang-Chi me center, then I can actually afford to put more power in these other locations, because they'll have to move out their 10 power vision. So hopefully all that makes sense. I used basically my full turn timer there, but I think I found the optimal play here, which is going to start with Professor X into the Raft, because I think the only way that my opponent catches me, like I said, is going to be with that Shang-Chi, and then a ton of power into Superflow, enough that Shang-Chi will not be able to stop me in that location no matter what my opponent comes up with, because unless they moved the vision over as well. But that is not going to be what happens, and we're going to get away with 4 cubes. I also wanted to look at this game, which possibly has the ultimate tempo location, TVA. And this deck is pretty good with TVA. If you think about it, in a typical game, on turns 5 and 6, I'm trying to play Professor X and Alioth, 2 cards that barely add power to the board and just ensure that whoever was winning on turn 4 stays winning at the end of the game. So a 4-turn game is definitely up this deck's alley, and I am more than happy to snap seeing TVA. My opponent also snaps though and reveals a turn 2 Mobius as we move into turn 3. That's going to give me Camp Lehigh, or Killmonger from Camp Lehigh, which is probably not a card that I can utilize that much, but what is nice here is I can play Psylocke. The fact that I can play it off Time Stone is actually irrelevant, but I can play Psylocke on turn 3, which allows me to have 5 energy on turn 5 and sets me up for a nice blue Marvel, and that should be really helpful. Lady Sif is going to be the discard from my opponent as I lose my Alioth. I actually wasn't paying attention, so I will have to make use of the graveyard feature as well, showing off some new additions to the game in this video, which is nice. And then I basically don't think that I'm ever going to beat Mobius here, because I think that my opponent will always play, or they'll always discard a card this turn. They did lose Lady Sif, but Swordmaster or something, that's probably what I want to be playing around. Even though nobody plays actual Swordmaster, I probably just want to play around the idea that my opponent could discard some stuff. I think that what's the 2/4? I forget off the top of my head, but they don't have it. They've got Blade, discarding the Collector. The Collector could have also been something here, but they've got Blade plus Swarm, so we're going to tie them in Camp Lehigh and take the win in differential, beating them 9-4, and that takes them for 8 cubes. And this was not a this was not a Proving Grounds game, by the way. This was in Gold Conquest, taking my opponent. Actually, this was game 3 of Gold Conquest. This won the entire Infinity ticket here. Here's proof. So I did also want to take a look at one other earlier game from this same Conquest. I just thought this would be a fun one here. This game doesn't really have as much to do with tempo as much as I just thought it was a fun game. I played Gladiator and I miss hitting the probably one card in my opponent's deck that can actually survive a Gladiator, which is a little bit of a bummer. And also, Cloning Vats is a reasonable location for my opponent because of Sunspot. They did play Angela into Cloning Vats as well, but Sunspot is really good into Cloning Vats, and my opponent is going to triple dip here with Sunspot, which means every energy that they do not use will get them 3 power on the board. So that already allows them to drop 18 power on the final turn of the game, doing absolutely nothing, which might be tough to beat. However, this deck can also drop a ton of power on the final turn of the game. Despite being a tempo deck, there are a lot of ways to just drop a bunch of power into it. So that is exactly what we're going to be seeing here. I'm going to play Mockingbird into Cloning Vats and then Mobius into Xandar, which does potentially cut off some potential lines for my opponent, but playing the Mockingbird into Cloning Vats is good because it's a cheap card and I can get another one to play for next turn, and this keeps my opponent honest in Cloning Vats as well, because it means that they will need to at least consider that I might be able to beat them in that location on the final turn, and they'll need to continue to soak up power to gain more out of their double sunspots. But really, what this banks on with Gladiator in the Space Throne, I maybe should have brought this up earlier, is really the idea that my opponent does not have another card in their deck that can beat Gladiator, that Mockingbird was the one miss for me. But on this final turn of the game, if my opponent does not have anything great in their deck, if all they can play is the Demon from the Hood, it's still going to be a lot of power. It's a 7 power Demon plus soaking 5 into Sunspot. That's 12 more power in Xandar on this final turn. But I get to drop 21 power from Mockingbird plus Cull Obsidian, and that's just really, really strong, y'all. And that is basically going to be enough to win it here. We already did the math, and we already saw that I eventually go on to win this gold conquest. And that is going to be it for me today. Hopefully y'all enjoyed this one. Let me know if you did down below, and don't forget to like and subscribe. But that is going to be it for me today. Thank you guys very much for watching. I'm NoLucksGiven. Peace.